Welcome again to our home in Yerushalayim. This week we will read Parshat Vaeira. Parshat Vaeira, of course, introduced us to the onset of the 10 plagues. And this evening I want to focus for a few moments on the second of those 10 plagues, the Makat Tzfardea, which is traditionally translated as the plague of the frogs. The Torah tells us, Vayet Aaron et yado al mimei Mitzrayim, v'ta'al Tzfardea, that Aaron spread out his arm over the waters of Egypt, and a tzfardea, a frog, came up from the waters, v'tachaset eretz Mitzrayim, and began to swarm over the land of Egypt. In a famous comment, Rashi tells us, v'ta'al ha-tzfardea, tzfardea achat haita, that there was actually one frog in the beginning, v'hayu makinota, and what happened? That they began to strike this frog repeatedly. Vehi matezet nichilim. And what happened is that from that one frog, when they struck that frog, each time they struck it, sprang forth swarms and swarms of other frogs. Now, the question that has to be asked, a famous question that could be asked on this Rashi, is why would anyone strike a frog? One frog comes out of the water. I mean, they must have been accustomed to seeing frogs come out of the water. They lived by the Nile River. One frog comes out of the water, and they struck it. And what happens when they struck it? It sprung forth other frogs. So what was the response again? They struck it again. So why would they have struck a singular frog? So the Abba Vernel, in a famous comment in the Abba Vernel says it couldn't have been a frog that came out. The word Tzfardea, says the Abba Vernel, is actually a species of crocodile. Think about it, the Nile crocodile. Now that would be an animal that if you saw one of them come out of the water, you'd be afraid enough that you'd want to strike that animal. And that makes sense. It's an animal that's dangerous, not solely a nuisance of a little frog. But Rabbi Samson Raphael Hirsch says no. That the Tzfardea was not the crocodile, was not a dangerous animal, but rather was an animal that was just annoying. A frog croaks and makes an annoying sound, says Rav Hirsch. And therefore, that sound began to annoy the Egyptians. And in their frustration with that annoyance, they began to strike that annoying frog. And then more frogs came. And they continued to be annoyed. Now, the Stapler Gaon, Rabbi Yaakov Yisrael Kanievsky, of blessed memory, he says something very interesting about this whole idea. He says, what do we learn from this? What did we learn from this? That if we see something that gets on our nerves, so to speak, and we get frustrated, what's our natural inclination, our frustration when we respond to something, is we respond by striking out, so lashing out at it. And we get frustrated. And when we get frustrated, we lose all sense of logic. Logically, had they realized after striking the frog once, says the Stapler Gaon, that it spewed forth other frogs, then they should have stopped after that. They shouldn't have continued striking it. But when we get into the heat of the moment and passion takes charge, logic departs. And that's an important lesson to learn from this, says the Stapler Gaon. Reb Itchel of Volozhin, the brother of the famed Reb Chaim Volozhiner, takes us a step further. He says, no, the lesson to be learned from Makat Tzfardea is a much more profound one and a much more important one. And that is, how do we respond when someone agitates us? When there's something in the world that is annoying, that is irritating, do we strike out and lash out with our words to reply to that annoyance and that irritation? Because what happens if we do so? Perhaps what we learn from Makat Tzfardea, says Reb Itchel, is that when we strike out and lash out at those irritating entities, that all we're doing is giving more fuel for their fire, for them to continue and persist to annoy us and to irritate us. And there's a powerful mussar in that. All too often in today's age of social media, we long to have the last word. We long to respond when something seems to irritate us or antagonize us on our social media. We all want to lash out and strike back. But I'll conclude with these words, with these amazing words spoken by Rav Kook Zatzal in the 1920s. Hatzadikim hatahorim, truly righteous individuals, einam koblim al risha el mosifin tzedek. They don't look at the world and complain about the wickedness in the world. Rather, they simply add justice to the world. They don't complain about the heresy in the world. Rather, they simply add faith to the world. They don't complain about the ignorance in the world. Rather, they simply add wisdom. May we be blessed to heed this powerful message inherent in the second of the 10 plagues, the Makat Sordea. Shabbat Shalom.